Today's movie is Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. And before you watch it, be sure to go check out the rest of my videos in this series. And now the original A Nightmare on Elm Street is considered a classic that gave the world a kick-ass new horror villain. And then you had Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, which is just a bad movie. Period. Like, you're allowed to say that. I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is the comeback story of our generation. And I guess I should warn you that if you're anything like me, the opening credits are painful to watch. I hate paper mache so much. It's like that weird slopping sound with the Mod Podge, and you get it all over your hands. It's just disgusting. Ugh. I have never been able to smell an opening credit sequence more. And the person who's about to put me into a murderous rage is Kristen Parker, played by Patricia Arquette. And she's making a paper mache model of Nancy Thompson and Jesse Walsh's old house. Kristen is trying to keep herself awake because she's been plagued with nightmares when her mom gets back from her date and tells her to go to bed. I like to imagine that Kristen's mom is on a date with Trent from the first movie.
Coming back to the sack.
Can't you force this?
Trent loves moms of troubled teens.
Elaine, where do you keep the bourbon?
Classic Trent. She falls asleep, and in her dream, she's in front of Nancy Thompson's house with just creepy-ass kids playing out front.
Hi, what's your name?
Kirsten?
Now, how much are the little kids in horror movies told about what they're doing? Like, is the director telling them to be as scary as possible, or does it just come naturally? Freddy chases her, and she thinks that she wakes up, but she's still in a nightmare, and Freddy slashes her wrist and makes it look like she did it to herself. And it's nice to see that Freddy's back to trying to make it look like kids are hurting themselves, instead of just like showing up to a real-life pool party and murdering people while shouting his own name. Kristen's mother places her in the Weston Hills Psychiatric Hospital for observation. The rate of teenage suicides has increased over the last several months, and Dr. Neil Gordon is trying to figure out why. And Dr. Gordon is not played by Bill Maher. I got into a screaming match with my Nana because I was 100% certain it was Bill Maher, and she called me a dumb sack of shit, and I shrieked that she was a twisted and withered old crone. It was the worst Easter Mass ever. And Dr. Gordon is a good man who really cares about his patients, and he runs the hospital with Dr. Elizabeth Sims.
If he continues having these outbursts, I'll have to have him isolated permanently.
And she just sucks. And they're welcoming a new grad student who's been doing groundbreaking research on pattern nightmares to help out at the hospital. And the grad student is none other than Nancy Thompson, who defeated Freddy in the original Nightmare on Elm Street. She meets Philip, who is a puppeteer that sleepwalks. Two of the creepiest things a person could do. Kincaid is a hothead who has disciplinary problems. And Joey doesn't speak, and he apparently killed a man in prison. Not as scary as being a puppeteer, but it's pretty close. Will Stanton was paralyzed after a failed suicide attempt, but he's still a surprisingly upbeat nerd that loves Dungeons and Dragons. Jennifer Caulfield wants to move to LA to be an actress. And Taryn White is a former drug addict. And that night, Kristen falls asleep and dreams that she's back in the Thompsons' old house. And Freddy attacks her as a giant Freddy worm-like thing. And I still remember flipping through a Fangoria magazine at the supermarket, just in awe of the stills of these movies. And just thinking it was the coolest thing ever and trying to formulate a plan of how I was going to watch it. Which basically just amounted to me going to my neighbor's house because the parents just didn't care. But Kristen is able to pull Nancy into her dream, and Nancy wakes them both up. They have a group discussion, and Dr. Sims seems to think that they're all suffering from mass psychosis brought on by guilt. But Nancy knows better and wants Dr. Gordon to prescribe Hypnosil to the kids to suppress their dreams. It's lights out at the hospital, and we get one of the more memorable scenes in the series when Freddy turns Philip into a real-life puppet. Or is he a human marionette? Freddy makes Philip walk to the top of the tower, and everyone is trying to stop him from jumping. And like a slightly less deranged Geppetto, Freddy cuts the strings from this real boy and sends him plummeting to his death. The next day at group, Dr. Sims says that she wants everyone to be sedated and locked in their rooms at night. But Gordon says that he's going to prescribe them Hypnosil. Jennifer is watching TV in the lounge area and falls asleep, and Dick Cavett turns into Freddy Krueger and murders Zsa Zsa Gabor, and holy hell, that is such an 80s thing to say. And in just another awesome and insane kill, Freddy comes out of the TV and smashes her head into the screen. But not before calling someone a bitch for the first of many times to come.
The prime time, bitch!
Nice. I love how in every movie, Freddy eventually gets bored with the suicide angle and is like, you know what? Let the cops try to sort this shit out. At the funeral, Dr. Gordon meets Sister Mary Helena, who tells him that the abomination must be laid to rest. Nancy tells the group all about Freddy and how he killed her friends, and he's coming after them because they're the last of the Elm Street children. And along with Kristen's ability to pull people into her dreams, Nancy tells them that they all have special powers they can unlock in their dreams. Dr. Gordon decides to try some group hypnosis to test Nancy's theory, and he starts by swinging a pendulum, and holy shit, that thing is really cooking. I would think that'd be way too distracting to be hypnotized by. The experiment is successful and they're all in the same dream. And in the dreams, Will can walk and is a powerful wizard. Kristen, along with being able to pull others into her dream, can also do acrobatics. Kincaid has super strength. Taryn is a badass with switchblades. And Joey is just a little more horny than a normal teenager. And if I was in this movie, I think my special dream power would be that thing of when you're in a house that isn't your house, but you know for a fact that it's your house. Like the house in your dream has an upstairs and your house doesn't, but like it is your house. Freddy takes Joey hostage in the dream and Dr. Sims wakes everyone up, but Joey is in a coma. The medical director fires Dr. Gordon and Nancy.
The session was unauthorized. It was purposely conducted without my knowledge.
Oh, you tattletale. Oh, you f***ing narc. As he's leaving, Dr. Gordon notices Sister Mary Helena at the top of the tower. He goes up there and we find that that section of the hospital has been abandoned for decades, and it used to be where they kept the most criminally insane patients. It was shut down in the 40s because a young nurse was accidentally locked in there for days, and the inmates raped her hundreds of times.
That girl was Amanda Krueger. Her child, Freddy. The bastard son of 100 maniacs.
Now, I've mentioned before that the rumor is that Freddy Krueger was named after someone that Wes Craven knew, but how messed up would it be if the Freddy that Wes Craven knew also had a mother named Amanda? Like, what the hell did this dude do to Wes? She tells Dr. Gordon that he must find Freddy's remains and bury them on hallowed ground. So Nancy and Gordon go to see Nancy's father, Lieutenant Thompson, who is the last person alive that knows where they disposed of Freddy's body. And he's at a bar drinking a shot of whiskey and a Miller High Life. In the Midwest, we call that living the high life, because people from the Midwest are not creative.
I don't believe we've ever met.
I'm your daughter's boss and current lover. I may also be Bill Maher. I don't know. The jury's still out on that one. Like, check this out. Did you know that ants can't catch COVID? It's because they have antibodies. Don't you see? That joke is so f***ing terrible that I very well could be Bill Maher. It's tearing me apart. Taryn pages Dr. Gordon to help because Sims drugged Kristen and put her in the quiet room. Nancy goes to the hospital while Dr. Gordon and Lieutenant Thompson go to get Freddy's remains. But Dr. Gordon stops at a church first and fills a whiskey bottle with holy water. And in the Midwest, we call that also living the high life. And he steals a crucifix, which in the Midwest we call our God-given right as Americans. Nancy's dad takes Dr. Gordon to the auto salvage yard and they find Freddy's bones in the trunk of his old Cadillac. Nancy convinces Max to let her say goodbye to the kids and she hypnotizes them to go into Kristen's dream to stop Freddy. So they enter her dream and Freddy immediately shows up and separates them. And Kristen is back in her room at the beginning of the movie, except that this time Freddy kills her mom.
You pulled Freddy away from the hottest award show in hell, the Dreamies. They were about to announce best use of a pun while eviscerating a teenager. That was my category, bitch.
Freddy then attacks Taryn in an alley, and she gets some good shots on him, but then he turns all of his fingers into hypodermic needles filled with Kool-Aid Blue Blast and jabs them right into her arms. Freddy then attacks Will with the wheelchair that they give you when you don't have insurance, and Will turns into the Wizard Master, but unfortunately Freddy is wearing the fedora of Evermora, and it raised his defensive stats to just an insane degree. And Freddy then attacks the distracted nerd, but the nerd has a few tricks up his sleeve.
You're mine now. Nothing can stop me. Wait a minute. Where am I? It doesn't look like your house, but somehow it is your house.
Haha! You've been dream-housed, bitch! So with Freddy killing children in ironic ways, he's kind of like a slightly more deranged Willy Wonka and a decidedly less deranged Timmy Tonka. Like at the Box Factory tour, Timmy Tonka was being a real dick to everybody, but he really had it out for my buddy Cameron, because he didn't like that Cameron had a skateboard with him, and like Timmy got all of his views about skateboarders from TV shows and movies. So Timmy was all like, "Oh, so you think you're so radical to the max, dude," and "Cowabunga, man." And then he strapped Cameron to a pallet jack and pushed him down the loading dock ramp. He crashed face first into a dumpster. And it wasn't like Cameron was even skateboarding in the building. He lived right next to the factory, so they let him just skateboard to the field trip from his house. When he got there, he even asked Timmy Tonka if there was some place that he could put his skateboard so that it wouldn't be a distraction. And Timmy just glared at him for a full minute before shambling away, and then trying to do what I can only guess was supposed to be the Gene Wilder thing, where he falls forward into a perfect roll, Except Timmy just fell like a damn tree and didn't move for about 15 minutes. The Dumpy Lumpies then led us into the break room. We had to watch some new hire training video until Timmy could resume the tour. Kristen, Nancy, and Kincaid meet back up, and a door leading down to the boiler room appears. And they use their Dream Warrior powers to help free Joey. And as Freddy's about to kill Kincaid, he disappears because Gordon and Thompson are getting ready to bury his bones. Freddy then somehow inhabits his bones, and he kills Lieutenant Thompson and knocks out Dr. Gordon. In Springwood, dead body buries you. What a country. Freddy then pulls the kids into a hall of mirrors, and Joey finally screams the word no and frees them all. And also, I don't know why this worked now. Jesse Walsh had the most ear-piercing scream ever.
He's gone. It's over!
Nancy, are you new? And Nancy's dad shows up and tells her that he's crossed over. Now, they are in a dream, not the afterlife. And if they were in the afterlife, I would think that wherever Freddy took them skewed more towards hell. So this is not as tender a moment as they think. That makes more sense. And see, Patricia, it looks like that stage combat class really paid off. And you didn't want to go. So Freddy stabs Nancy, and Nancy stabs Freddy with his own knives, and Gordon buries the bones and splashes holy water on him, and Freddy disappears in a ball of light. And at the funeral for Nancy, Gordon finds Sister Mary Helena's grave and discovers that she was Freddy's mother all along. And the story goes that Wes Craven found the actual grave of his high school bully Fred's mother and put it in the movie as a final FU. So that was Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. It was the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie I ever saw, and it changed my life. I mean, maybe not for the better. I was pretty young when I saw it, and who knows what kind of damage that can have on a developing brain. Like, there's some themes and images that maybe young children should not be subjected to, especially if they're not in a place emotionally where they know how to process it. Like, I'm sure everyone has to expend so much mental energy trying to suppress the psychotic thoughts that seep into every waking moment. Right? Right?